There once was a very young nobleman who had recently inherited a vast estate. Upon this estate, he had 2 leaseholders, a woodsman who leased his woods, and an innkeeper who leased his inn. Now that young man, he was very young, very rich, and very bored. And when it was time to renew the lease for his leaseholders, he called them to him and he said, "This year I will renew the lease free of charge for the next 10 years to the one who can answer 3 riddles. If you do not answer them correctly, the lease will be doubled for the next 10 years. Now here are the riddles. What is the fastest thing in the world? What is the dearest thing in the world? And what is the richest thing in the world? Go! You have 3 days to bring me an answer." Well, the woodsman, he went home to his wife in a huff of anger. "Oh, that young master, who does he think he is, giving us riddles in exchange for the lease?" But when he told the riddles to his wife, she said, "Ah, husband, young men like the nobleman only want to hear about themselves. Do not worry. Just tell him that his horse is the fastest. His mother, naturally, is the dearest. And everyone knows he's the richest man around, so tell him that his chest of treasures is the richest." The woodsman was pleased with his wife's answers. Meanwhile, the innkeeper went home, downcast and worried. He did not have a wife, but he had an only daughter. Zusha was her name, and she was as clever as she was beautiful. When she saw her father's worried face, she asked him what was the matter, and he said, "Ah, my daughter, we shall soon have to find a new roof above our head, for the young master will renew the lease to the one who can give him answers to riddles." "But tell me, father, what are they? Perhaps I can help." When he told her, she smiled and said, "Do not worry, father. I will give you the answers when it's time for you to go." On the 3rd day, the woodsman and the innkeeper appeared before the young nobleman. First to speak was the woodsman. "Master, why, the fastest thing in the world is your horse. The dearest thing in the world, why, naturally it is your mother. And the richest thing in the world is your chest of treasures." The young man looked more bored than ever. He turned to the innkeeper. The innkeeper tried to hide his trembling hands. "Master, I believe the fastest thing in the world is thought, for it can pass great distances in the twinkling of an eye. The dearest thing in the world is sleep, for no human being can survive without it. And the richest thing in the world is the earth, for all riches come from it." A big smile spread across the young nobleman's face. "Ah, those were excellent answers, my good man. But now be honest with me. You didn't think of them yourself, did you?" "No, sir." "Who gave you those answers?" "My daughter, sir." "Your daughter?" The young man's face lit up. "Well, if your daughter is as clever as that, I would like to meet her. Tell her to come see me in 3 days' time, but tell her she must come neither dressed nor naked. Tell her she must come neither walking nor riding. And tell her she must bring me a gift that is not a gift." The poor innkeeper, he went home more downcast than before. And when Zusha saw his face, she said, "What is it? What happened?" "Oh, my child, that master, he wants to meet you now, and he's made the most ridiculous conditions." But when he told her, she smiled and said, "Do not worry, father. Just go to the market, buy me a fisherman's net, a goat, 2 white doves, and a pound of meat." "A goat, a fisherman's net, 2 white doves, and a pound of meat? Zusha, what are you saying?" But she seems to know what she's doing, and so he went to the market and got her everything that she needed. And on the third day, Zusha stripped off all her clothes until she was as naked as the day she was born, and then she wrapped herself up in the fisherman's net. Now I ask you, was she dressed? No. Fisherman's net is not clothes. But was she naked? No, for she was wrapped in a fisherman's net. Then she climbed upon the goat so that her feet touched the ground. And I ask you, was she walking? No, she was sitting on the goat, but was she riding? No. Her feet were touching the ground. And in this way, with the doves in one hand and the meat in the other, she dragged herself slowly up to the mansion of the nobleman. He saw her coming through the window and smiled at her cleverness, but to test her courage, he unleashed his dogs. They came barking ferociously at her, but she threw the meat to them and walked calmly past them. She walked in and said, "Master, I have brought you a gift that is not a gift." The minute he reached to take her gift, she opened her hands, and the doves flew out the open window. The young man was delighted. "I've been looking for someone as clever as you for a long time," he said. And immediately he wanted to marry her. But seeing how clever she is, he said, "There is a condition. You must promise me never to interfere in my affairs." She looked at him. She said, "I will marry you, but I also have a condition. You must promise that if ever you change your mind and decide to send me back to my father's house, you will allow me to take with me one thing that I like best in this house." It was agreed, and they were married, and they lived in happiness for several months. And one day, two peasants came to the master to settle a dispute, and as they were walking out, Zusha noticed that one of them was crying. She asked him about his troubles, and he said, "Oh, madam, you see, me and my neighbor, we own a stable in partnership. I own a mare. My neighbor, he owns a wagon. 3 nights ago, my mare gave birth to a colt right beneath my neighbor's wagon, and my neighbor claims that the colt belongs to him. Well, we came to the master to settle the dispute, and the master said that whoever owns the wagon owns everything that's beneath it." When Zusha heard that, she was ashamed at her husband's foolish decision, and she said, "I think I can help you," and she whispered some instructions in the peasant's ear, and he was off. That afternoon, as the young nobleman was coming home upon his horse on the high road, he saw a curious sight up ahead. In the middle of the dusty road, a man was standing with a fishing pole. As he approached, he saw it was one of the peasants that came to see him earlier that day. He came up to him and he said, "What are you doing, my good man?" "Fishing." "Fishing?" "Fishing in the middle of the dusty road. Are you out of your mind?" "No, sir. I just thought if a wagon can give birth to a colt, I can find fish in the dusty road." And when the young nobleman heard that, he realized his error in judgment, and he immediately recognized his wife behind that sentence. He stormed into the house, red with rage. "How dare you, Zusha? How dare you humiliate me like this in front of my peasants? You broke your promise!" And he was so mad that he said he doesn't want to see her anymore, and she must return to her father's house. Zusha did not argue. She only asked for a chance to have one last meal with him. He agreed. She poured a sleeping potion into his drink, and that evening he ate, he drank, and he fell asleep. She then instructed the servants to take him in the carriage. That morning the young nobleman awoke, and he was in the innkeeper's cottage. "What is this? What's going on here?" There was Zusha smiling. "Not much, dear. Just keeping to our agreement, remember? I took with me the one thing I loved best in the house, you. For a moment, that young man was speechless, and then he threw his head back and laughed to realize how Zusha had outwitted him again. He said, "I've been an arrogant fool, Zusha. Please forgive me. Come back to the house with me, for I never want to be without you again." And so they lived together in honor and happiness from that day on. And if ever a difficult dispute arose in that young man's affairs, he was known to say, "Let us bring this matter before my wife, for she is a very clever woman."